good to go.
Okay, I'll call the Wellington Board of Education special meeting order on Wednesday, March 17th. This is a virtual meeting, and the agenda is call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, and approval of updated cost estimate on Center and Hall School, and adjournment. Okay, so I will call the meeting to order. And next item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would stand, put their right hand over their heart. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And the next item on the agenda is approval of updated cost estimates for partial roof replacement at Center School and full roof replacement at Hall Memorial School. This is a change. We already approved money
Correct.
for the roof, and I understand there's been a change because of an inspection of the roof.
Costs, yeah. Yep. So Scott Pellman's from Colliers is on the call with us tonight. And I mentioned this at the last board meeting that we had been talking about this, the potential for an increase. It's actually bigger than I expected. But let me walk you through what that looks like. I'm just going to share my screen here for a second.
Bill, did anything get sent? Because I didn't see anything in my email.
No, Donna, we literally just got updated numbers today from the architects we hired. We walked the roof on Friday, and I threw this together this afternoon. And so basically, let me walk you through the shocker here and kind of answer some questions and give you a sense of what's what. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to move my screen so I can see you. So the reason for the increases here at both buildings are for several reasons. Obviously, with COVID putting us off here, and I'm sure if you've heard anything about construction, there's an increase in materials. And so we're seeing the increase in materials here. I walked the roof on Friday with the architect from Silver Petroselli, who is the one that will be doing the architectural work for us. And one of the things they noted was you can feel it when you walk on the roof at Hall. It's almost like you're walking on a sponge. And they're concerned about the decking is Tectum, and it's what it's called. And so you can't, and Scott, feel free to jump in here. You can't necessarily replace Tectum. Like, you can't just cut out a small section and replace it. From what I understand, you have to take out larger pieces to replace them. And so there's an added cost to that in the cost. Brick repointing was not in the initial number that was sent out, and that's to the chimneys and things. And Scott, if you want to speak to that, is that just because when they start talking about leaks, they don't want it to be considered that it's a roof leak? So the brick repointing is around sections of the building that are, kind of perpendicular to the roof and the chimneys and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we had originally observed it when we did our walkthrough and started developing the initial concept budgets. And yeah, you're exactly right. You could have the brick has deteriorated or needs to be repointed, and you can get a heavy driving rain horizontally. That rain will actually go through the brick wall and get in behind the flashing and start entering the building. So what we did is we included allowances for so many square feet at a cost. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll use that full allowance, but we wanted to make sure that we had dollars in there to make sure that the job was done correctly. We had also, in above and beyond what Phil's already mentioned, yes, he mentioned, we've got now dollars in there for deck repair for both projects based on input from the architect. repointing, and then we also carried an allowance. They're going to do their best to try and avoid adding additional overflow roof drains and piping, which would facilitate some work within the building. We are carrying an allowance for that as well. The key here is we need to make sure that the budget, we stay well below the budget, or we stay below the budget. We can't afford to have a bid and come in above budget. We can certainly bid some of these things as alternates as well to give us a little flexibility. If the committee chose not to, finds out what the value is for the brick, you could make the decision to do it or not to do it. We looked at construction contingency. We wanted to make sure that there was there's a 10% construction contingency built into each project. We don't know when they tear the roof off. There may be some unforeseen conditions. It's always prudent to carry a contingency. In case some of those things arise, you have that money set aside to address those concerns. And then there was some, a few things from the original estimates, again, from a soft cost standpoint, some of the reimbursables, advertising costs, some of those fees that we wanted to make sure, again, that we had in the overall budget. We are seeing pressure on lumber costs right now. We're hearing that from a lot of the construction managers that we're working with. Lumber and steel. Now, in this case, hopefully we're not going to be getting into any issues with steel, but certainly lumber cost is a factor, as well as potentially roofing materials.
So the only other thing, and the roof drains, just so folks know, is there's the original roof drains are there already, and you basically need a secondary roof drain. So if the roof can't flood. So if something happens with an initial roof drain that either runs off the side of the building, or there's a higher roof drain that can be put in. But if you get bids that are over this total amount, we're stuck.
Right, and I would like to add, if I could,
absolutely,
is that during the architects' interviews with all three architects, we had some very specific conversations on what current roofing costs, roofing bids that they're receiving, as well as looking at a lot of their recent historical data, projects that they constructed last year, the year before. What were those roofs coming in at? We talked about specifically your roof, which is a fairly open single-story roof. The original budgets were estimated at $17 a square foot. We were hearing anywhere from $20 to $25, $26 a square foot. After further consulting with Silver Petrocelli and based on looking at historical data from the 8 different architects that we received proposals, we landed at a $22 a square foot for the membrane areas of Center School and $23 at Hall School. So that was a big jump from the 17. But again, those numbers now are based on historical data of recent jobs that they've bid. So we feel that those numbers should be accurate.
And so you see the approved numbers for both buildings there. That's what went to town meeting. And we're basically at the wire right now. So I'm on the Board of Finance agenda for tomorrow night to share this, assuming that, you'll pass it to determine if they can fund it. There's obviously, they have to determine the funding. Donna's working on that already, because this is again, one of those where you have to fund the full amount. And then you get reimbursed from after you do the project. So you can see the increase there is $541,000. The reimbursement, and again, that's the estimate, 65.36 is your reimbursement rate. And the additional cost of taxpayers is around $187,000. And so this, basically the process is, if you approve this tonight, I present it to the Board of Finance tomorrow night. They determine where to go from there. If they approve it, then the selectmen call a meeting on Monday. Their meeting on Monday would include setting a town meeting. This would go to town meeting, and there would be an increase. And Scott, you and I had not had a chance to talk about this. When you do should they do the vote on the new total, or should they do the vote on the increase?
I would approve the new total for each separately as a separate motion because they are two different projects.
Yep, okay. So
And
that's,
just clarifying, the totals are 650,000 and 945,000.
you are correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then once at town meeting, then, the town meeting, literally the timeline that we know of right now on that tight timeline is we would have the referendum. I think it was April 4th. No, sorry, April 6th. That's a Sunday. April 6th. And then, this application's basically done and in by in the first 10 days of April. Glad to answer any questions.
Phil, the drains that you were talking about, were they at Hall School?
The what?
The drains that you were talking about?
It's actually both schools need them.
Hall
It's
School?
both schools. It's a requirement now. So, and Scott, I don't think either school has that currently. There's no secondary drain system, and they would
Correct.
both need it.
Yeah. The code, the way the code is now is it assumes if your primary drain gets clogged, you have to provide a means for the water to still exit the roof. The design team is going to do their best to try and design it using scuppers and not use additional internal drains. But, till their design is complete, they've, reviewed the deck, looked at the pitch, the way that they can pitch the roofs. We're sort of assuming a worst case scenario here. And so hopefully, with some prudent design and oversight, those numbers, would be better. But again, we've got to assume, again, the worst case scenario.
Phil, the other question I have is in regard to the contingency. Does that include money for the change orders if there are any on a project like this?
Yeah, Scott mentioned that. Scott, you can speak to that with the percentage contingency.
Yeah, we have a 10% construction contingency. So that's absolutely what it's there for, is if there are change orders once the project is awarded, that budget would be used for those change orders.
And they're included in the new figures that we have.
Correct.
And a change
Yes.
order is something like they tear off the roof, they find some decking that needs to be replaced that's not budgeted for, that's outside the scope. That would be the contingency funds for something like that. Anne has her hand up, Herb.
Okay, Ann.
I have two questions. Thank you, Herb. First of all, a historical question. When we initially took the roofs to the Board of Finance, did they approve full replacement? Is that what they approved for CIP? Okay, very good. And my second question is, do we pay the entire amount and then we later on get reimbursed by the state? So the town would need to put out the entire 541 and then reimbursed at a later date.
Correct. And Scott, you may have knowledge of this better than I do, but I know that it used to be payments took a long time for reimbursement. And now what's harder is now the application process is slower and more painstaking. And now the payment side is faster. It used to be the opposite.
Yeah, they're doing it all electronically now. And typically for major projects, you can ask for a payment for every 2 months. So, and you can't apply for your next payment until the previous payment's been approved and is in the bank, that the money is transferred into the town's account. So, we're seeing, around 2 months from application of payment. It may be a little bit quicker on a 9-priority project, but we're seeing approximately 2 months to get.
Okay. Thank you.
Scott, what percentage is that? What percentage of the payment do they do that in the first 2 months? What you?
It's whatever you apply for in the EDO 46. So when you do your application for reimbursement, again, this is going to be a pretty quick project. We may, potentially, if let's say there's 2 applications for payment from the contractor, you could either choose to wait until you get the second one and the job is complete and put in for the full amount, or you could put in at the halfway point, but then you might be waiting an extra, 2 months from that point to be able to apply the remainder. So, we'll have to talk about that. It really depends on when the the contractor starts when he puts in his first application for payment.
Thank you.
Donna has a question. Is there any kind of holdback in the process so that the contractor gets most of the money, but we have a little bit of time to make sure that the job is done well and we don't have leaks that we didn't know about and things like that before they get the remainder of the money?
Well, there is normal is a 5% retainage on all work. So we would hold back 5%. The architect is going to be out there on a weekly basis, as well as, colliers to support Phil. We can also be doing some roofing inspections, to make sure. And then you will have a 20-year no dollar limit warranty. So you'll have an edge-to-edge warranty of at least 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Phil, on the roof itself, you mentioned that it's like a sponge.
Yeah.
So in this project, now we're going to replace the entire roof. Is that the way I understand it?
Yeah, Scott, if you want to speak to that, I mean, it's a full tear off. What does it look like? What does that mean, full tear off?
Right. Full tear off means all roofing material, all insulation, all flashings and everything right down to the existing deck. The state does not provide reimbursement for a roof over, for keeping, potentially existing wet insulation, other damage. So the state mandates that you tear the roof down all the way down to either the wood deck on parts of Hall Memorial or this Tectum, or potentially the metal roofing deck at Center School. So, it is a requirement if you want state reimbursement that you have to do a complete tear off all the way down.
Okay, thank you.
Laura had her hand up. I'm not sure if she still has a question.
Okay, Laura?
I was just wondering, with this additional cost, the reimbursement, the additional cost is 187. What was the original cost to the taxpayers in our first, what we approved?
So the total approved that's the total amount that was approved at town meeting. So if you multiply that number by 65%, this 1,053,000 right here, Laura.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be the reimbursement rate, and the town would pay the remainder. And then this is 1.5, 1.6 really is the new number. With that additional cost of taxpayers is below that.
It's about a 50% increase, roughly.
Anne had her hand up, Herb.
And
Are both buildings getting brand new roofs all the way down? Okay.
Yes, except for one section of center that was already done in 2014. But both are, you have to get reimbursement, like Scott said, you have to do the tear off process. You cannot roof over.
And which part of center was done in 2014?
It's the upper parking lot wing. When you look from
Okay.
the upper parking lot, that section right there, that looks beautiful. That section there was redone.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other comments or questions that you can think of?
Michelle has her hand up, Herb.
Michelle?
If you're ready for a motion.
I believe we are.
Okay, I move that we approve a partial roof replacement cost for Center School at $650,000.
I seconded. Eliana Testa.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Are there any further comments relative to the motion? Hearing none, we will vote on the motion. And this is for Center School, Michelle, right?
Center School for a partial roof.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is passed. We'll move to the Hall Memorial School. And we
Okay,
need a
so-
motion for this.
I move that we approve the amount of $945,000 for the full roof replacement of Hall Memorial School.
I second it. Elena Testa.
Okay, the motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? This is on Hall Memorial School. And the amount was how much? 900?
$945,000.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll move to the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion is passed. Okay, so we have two motions. Both motions have passed. We have approved the increase amounts for the roof repair for Hall and Center School. Phil, do you have anything else that you want to say at this time?
You'll have to do this again in 20 years approximately. Keep two buildings.
And this will be done this summer?
That's our goal. That's what we're aiming for. That's why I want to get this done and approved at town meeting so we can apply in April.
Okay. Okay, if I don't hear any more comments, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. And did you ever have a short meeting like this before?
We're on to another one now at 6:30.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
Okay. Good night, all.
Thanks
Have a
for
good evening.
coming, Scott.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.